Hello everyone, in today's video I'll show you how to get data from a third-party server using HTTP REST APIs and use the retrieved data to detect which country the site visitor came from. I will also show you how to use this service to automatically select the visitor's country from a drop-down menu and show his country's flag and dial-in code, exactly as what you would do on our website when you want to create a new account. So, let's get started. Okay guys, let's get started. First things first, I'm going to enable the development mode here. This site is a blank site. The elements exist on the site, and as you can see, it doesn't have any code inside its pages. So let's go to the first example here, which is the how to detect the country that the visitor came from. So first things first, we need to get the countries and the dialing codes. To do so, I'm going to call a service from a backend module. I'm going to call it example, and in the example module I will just clear the module, and I will create a function now that I can call from the front end. I'm going to call it get countries. So export async function get countries. I will tell you in a moment why I created an async function. First of all, we need the token that we are going to use to access the third-party server. How we are going to access the third-party server? We need a special token, a bearer token, and it's already saved in Wix secrets. So I will just get it from here, and I will create a constant variable called token, and we need to retrieve the token from Wix secrets backend. So I'm going to access the get secret, and the secret name is Nasriya API token. Now I'm going to create the request options, which are consisted of the method, which is a get method. We want to get data, and for the headers I'm going to use we are going to get a JSON. So I will use we need to accept applications in JSON. So accept application JSON. And now for the authorization, the third-party server needs to authenticate the request. So this token is used for authentication and authorization. So I'm going to create an authorization header, and it will be equal to a bearer token, which is the token that we retrieved from the Wix secrets. Now let's let's send the request. Regularly we use fetch, but on Wix sites we can also use get JSON to get a JSON from a third-party server. So I'm going to show you both ways. So let's first start by importing fetch and get JSON from Wix fetch. Let's start by, I will show you what's the difference here between fetch and get JSON. So let's start with fetch. So we need the URL of the endpoint. The endpoint that we are going to send the request to. Actually, it's an endpoint of that I already created. I'm going to write down the endpoint. Okay, so here's the endpoint, but we need to, because our example here, in our example, we don't just need a list of countries, we also need the flags and the dialing codes. So we need to modify the endpoint to ask for these details. So first things first, I'm going to specify the language to English. I want to get the countries in English, and I'm going to ask for the flags of these countries. So I'm going to write a property which is include flags, and it needs to be equal to true, and another property which is include country codes. I believe it's country code. No, dialing codes. Include dialing codes. The country code is different than the dialing code. We can get both of them. We can get both of them, the dialing code and the country code. The country code, for example, in Germany, it's DE, and in the UK, it's UK, and the dialing code is +44 in the UK. So right now we have the dialing codes and the flags, which is exactly what we need in our example here. Okay, so using fetch, here's fetch takes two parameters: the URL of the endpoint, which is here, and an option of the request, which we declared above here. Now the fetch will return an HTTP response. So first we need to check the response, and because we are getting a JSON from the endpoint, this endpoint return a JSON, we need to get that JSON from the fetch. But first we need to check whether the response was successful or not. So let's check. If HTTP response is okay, that means if it was successful as expected, then what we want to do, or I will handle the other case. In that case, if the response wasn't as we expected, I'm going to reject the promise and saying, let's say, request failed, and status is HTTP response dot status text, and code, I'm going to return the code to the front end. HTTP response dot status. This is the code. Okay. If the response was okay, we need to return the JSON. To get the JSON, we need to use this way. I'm going to create a variable, and it will be equal to the JSON from the HTTP response. But for now, okay, we have the JSON here, and I'm going to resolve the promise. Okay, so I'm going to resolve the JSON to the front end. Sorry, I'm going to call it JSON. Okay, so in this case we used fetch. Fetch gets the response like here, as here, and then convert and then get the JSON from the response. So instead we can use get JSON, and here the get JSON will resolve to the JSON itself, and we don't need to check the response and anything here. So we can return the JSON immediately. But because get JSON is only available here on websites, I'm going to stick with fetch instead, because it's used more frequent than get JSON. Okay, so after we get the countries from the third-party server, this is how we access the endpoint of that server, and these are the options, the method that we are using, the headers, and with security in mind. So I'm using a token to avoid receiving too many requests to my site. Now let's get back to the front end of the page, which is this page. And first we need to get the countries. We need to import our function. We need to import our functions that we declared, which is get countries from the backend example.jsw module, and I'm going to create a variable for the countries. The countries that we get from the backend, is actually an object. It's an array of objects. Each object represents a country with three properties: country and flag and dialing code. So the countries here is actually equal to an array. It's equal to an array actually that will only store the countries that we are going to put here. So the countries will be, let's say, Afghanistan, Albania, and so on. So first things first, I'm going to change the function here to an async one, and I'm going to call the get countries function. The results that are returned from the backend are an object returned from the endpoint that we saw here on the backend. So first things first, I'm going to show you the result that we get from the backend. Two properties with the status success, and the code is 200. And here is the results. The results that I talked about is the array of objects. These are objects, which are the countries. So each country, each object has three properties, as I said before, which are the country name, the dialing code, and the flag. So let's get back and assign the countries. Let's assign the countries to results.result, as we saw here from the log, from the result that we get from the backend, from the backend. Okay, so for now, let's create I'm going to create another variable called mapped, and it will equal to the countries.map, and I'm going to map the countries to its names. So items dot country, because the country name is stored in the country property. So right now we have an array of mapped countries, and now I'm going to create another variable called countries options. As you know, the drop-down menu does not accept arrays with let's say with text. The options of a drop-down menu accepts an array of objects. Each object will have two properties, the label and the value. So that's why we are creating this array. And now we are going to run a for each loop for, I'm going to call it country, and countries options push. Here, like this, we are creating we are inserting or pushing an object inside the new array. So this is the label, and now the value, which is country. Like this, we are pushing a new object with this country. Let's say if the country was Palestine or United Kingdom, the label will be United Kingdom and the value will be United Kingdom. This way we can assign this array to the options drop down menu. So now let's assign the new array countries, I believe, yeah, countries. We will assign this array with the new countries layout to the options property of the countries drop down menu. So now, right now, countries options. It's important when developing something to actually preview the page and see your results. So as you can see right now, we have all the countries in this drop-down menu, but no country is selected right now. No country is selected by default, and this +970 is a placeholder and was not saved or set by code, so it doesn't mean anything. So right now we will use another endpoint to detect the country that the visitor came from. So yeah, let's run another fetch. We need to import fetch here, or I'm going to import get.json here. I used fetch on the backend. I'm going to use get.json here, just to, you know, no, not from the backend, from Workspace, sorry. So I'm going to return a get.json. I'm going to return a get.json with this endpoint. In this case, we only need the endpoint URL. We don't need any headers because it works. And so when the get.json resolves promise, when the get.json promise resolves, we get a JSON here. We get a JSON. In this JSON, well, actually, I'm going to create a function for this, and I'm going to call it function detect IP, and then I'm going to return a JSON, return get.json, sorry, and here I'm going to see async. Sometimes if the fetch failed, you will not get a success response. So let's first check the JSON.status. If JSON.status is equal to success, and if it's not equal to success. If it's not equal to success, we will reject the promise.reject with the JSON to display it, and we need to write a catch in case the whole thing failed. And also here I'm going to reject the promise. Okay, so if JSON.status is equal to success, I'm going to create here another function called set country. This function will update the UI based on the JSON. So of course it takes the country, the visitor country as a parameter, and in this function we need to access the country's object to extract the flag and the dialing code. And to do so, we need to map first the countries to its names, so, and get the index from that. So let index will equal to countries dot map items dot country, and we need to find the index of the country that was passed to the function. So country. Here we will call the set country function and pass it the country of the visitor on the page. So to access the country, we will use JSON.query. Now let's resolve the promise. Let's resolve the promise, of course, with the JSON, because why not? And here in the set country, after we found the index of the country that the visitor came from, we need to know, well, because the options on the drop-down menu are the same as the countries options, countries array here. So the index of the countries here are the same as the index of the countries in our array here, because all of them are sorted ascending from A to Z. The countries drop-down menu, the countries drop-down menu dot selected index is the same as the index of the country. So index, and the flag country flag dot src is the countries. We need to access the countries because the flag is stored in the countries array and objects inside this array. So because countries is an array, we know the index of the object of the country that we came from. In my case, my country is United Kingdom, and I know the index from here of United Kingdom in the countries array. So here's the index, and after we access the object inside the countries array, we need to access the flag property to assign it to the src property of the country's flag. So what else we need to set the dialing code here as well. So dialing code value is equal to the same way as the country's flag that we used here. We can access the country by knowing the index of the object, and here instead of flag we use the dialing code, and that's it. After that, I want to resolve the promise. Okay, so now the two functions here are ready, but we need to call them here. So in this case, I'm going to call the function which is detect IP, and then I don't need the detect IP resolves to a JSON, but I won't use it here. After the detect IP function resolves, I want to create an event handler for the country's drop-down menu to change the values, which are the flag and the dialing code. So I'm going to now create an onChange event handler for the dialing codes. when the value of the countries change, we just need to call the set country value, right? And pass it the value of the new selected country, like this. For debugging, let's add a catch, small catch, and here let's log the error. And yeah, after declaring the event handler, I want the app to change its state to the ready state. As you can see, this is a multi-state box with two states, ready and preloader. Preloader will remain active until the page or the functions here are ready. Then the app will change to the ready state. Sorry, I have JSON country. If we selected another country, let's say Palestinian territory, it will change the dialing code and the flag. Let's search for Canada, of course, Sweden, Germany, Poland, come on, Poland, and yeah, that's it. That's pretty much it for our example today. Hope you find it useful. Also, if you can see here, I have a simple tools that you can play around with. Let's say this is a REST API tool that you can play with to test your endpoints, and this is a page created, of course, with the Velo APIs, and it can detect the visitor IP address as well as the country and location and any other things. Of course, you can search for any IP address. Let's search for this one, let's say, and it's located in Norway. And let's switch now. It's located in Russia. Please let me know if you want to see a tutorial about this tool here and how you can benefit from it in social media platforms, like logging the location of the last login place. For example, save a history of the location a member logged in your website to your website from, and the IP addresses. Of course, I can show you this IP because it's not my IP address. And yeah, please let me know if you are interested to see a tutorial video about this section, and see you next time. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked the video and found it useful, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and leave a comment with your opinions down below. If you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. If you don't know what to watch next, please check out our tutorial videos and join our community forum, and don't forget to subscribe.